Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you joined us today. I'd like to introduce my guest speaker, Hayley Rice, who's a play therapist. Hayley, I'm so glad you joined today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Linda. It's fantastic to be here. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I'm excited also. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself for everybody.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Hayley Rice and I'm living in Ireland, if you can tell by my accent. I'm a play therapist. I trained as a teacher, originally a primary school teacher. I taught for 10 years in Ireland and in Dubai. And then I trained as a play therapist and I went on to train as a child and adolescent psychotherapist. So I love my job, absolutely love working with kids. I get to play, I get to do creative things all day, but I do work with a lot of, trauma, attachment issues. I did my master's research around the topic of autism, and I work in a very collaborative way with parents, often in the room. And there's a real, I suppose, variety to my practice at the moment. So it can be anything from trauma, but then anxiety and things like how to manage anger in children, things like that, the day-to-day stuff as well. So yeah, that's kind of me.
So, Hayley, I know that you put together a course on anger, and I have to tell you that I think it's brilliant. Would you like to talk about anger? Say a few things.
Yeah, but anger, like it's actually become something that I really am passionate about, parents changing their perspective on it and changing how they approach it, feel about it, and how they help children through it. Because I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, we weren't allowed to get angry. You were allowed to be happy, sad, excited, but anger was kind of like, stop that. Don't, that's bold. In Ireland, we say bold, we don't say naughty. So you were bold girl if you were getting angry or expressing anger. But we know from research and from healthy attachment and from all the things we know about the brain that it's natural and developmentally appropriate and needed for children to express anger in a healthy and safe way, for them to learn about it. And that becomes their, I suppose, their working model on how do they do feelings. So I really am passionate about helping parents to understand that piece, and then to have strategies to help their kids along as they inevitably get angry.
The play therapist, can you share with us how you approach anger with play?
Yeah, so I suppose it's a little bit different. Well, for the parents I'm working with in Ireland and the teachers as well, introducing playfulness, playful parenting, playful approaches, and having, I suppose, almost like a toolkit of things that you can do in those moments when your child's getting heightened. That's something I equip people with on the course, on my online program, but also I suppose like the parent being able to self-regulate first, take care of their own needs, and be able to be that calm, secure base that the child, even if the child's getting super, super heightened and really angry, the parent isn't going into anger land with them, that the parent is staying here calm and the child is actually going to come down with the parent's co-regulation. So I suppose it is a lot. There's a lot of attachment work in that co-regulation piece, and it goes back to early experiences for the parent, for the child. So there's a lot in it. There's a lot of work in it. But I suppose with the playful part, a lot of my play that I do encourages that attachment to be fostered and grown. And it might be just short bursts of play that involve having some touch, having eye contact, mirroring each other, feeling really attuned and grounded and connected. Those kind of things, actually, it's like an emotional vaccination for the big outbursts, isn't it?
Oh, I love that expression, emotional vaccination, especially when it's infused with the hugs and the giggles.
Yes, isn't that true? And it's, I suppose, when you work on that, like, this from Theraplay,
yeah,
I use that model as well. So that would have been a part of my core training. So it's when you're using the touch, the eye contact, the challenge, the nurturance, if you're baking together, you're doing playful things like singing and moving, you are really teaching your child that they're acceptable in any feeling, and that there's a supportive guide for them to get them through each feeling. Because I think like a lot of the kids that I work with, they're afraid to feel angry too. It can feel so overwhelming, and it's a hard feeling to feel. So the last thing you want to do is feel overwhelmed with anger and feel alone and unsupported. That makes it far worse. It's enough for them to feel angry and have to feel that feeling, isn't it?
Yes,
So yeah,
especially when parents say, go to your room and calm down.
right. This is the part that I'm trying to work on changing for people, because the naughty step and isolating in times of anger versus co-regulating. And we, like, when you send to the room or you send to the naughty step, it's a complete rejection. So I'm not allowed to be with you. We're not in connection. You're not my secure base when
Absolutely.
I'm having this feeling. But if I'm smiling, I'm okay. So it sends that message, doesn't it? And
Yes.
yeah, I think
Sends a
I,
very clear message that, like, I don't want to be with you right now, and go fix yourself, right?
yeah, sort
And for
yourself
kids,
out.
yes, and for kids who are, dealing with trauma, they're being re-traumatized over again. It's the abandonment and the rejection.
Yeah, it is. It gets to that point. And I think a lot of really well-meaning parents don't know this and don't realize what they're doing, because they're just parenting how they were parented. They haven't actually stopped and been educated or thought about it, or they don't know how our brains are wired and all of that. So that's my part and that's your part, isn't it?
Yes,
Giving
yeah.
this knowledge so that people can stop and break that pattern of that rejection and those unhelpful ways, particularly for traumatized children. So yeah, that, like, rather than isolating, I think when we isolate kids on the naughty step, they don't learn anything either. So we know they can't co-regulate until best chances about 7 years old. And even at that it might not be consistent.
Well,
Or
at
I mean,
8 years old, that's when the brain can finally do concrete logic, right?
yeah,
Scientifically, they've proved that. So, 8 and below, they're dealing with their feeling brain. They can't do, and the wiring isn't there.
and the co-regulation piece only comes after thousands of episodes of, or sorry, the self-regulation piece only comes after all of the co-regulation has been integrated, and that doesn't happen until about 7 or 8 either. But I know even as an adult, sometimes I need co-regulator, somebody outside of me to help me. It's a human thing, isn't it? It's throughout life.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, for parents to know that, when you send your child to the naughty step or to their room, they're not going to regulate well, they're not going to learn, and they're going to feel disconnected completely, and they're probably just going to do it again. They've lost that part of where you could have named the feeling for them, helped them through it, stayed connected, and they felt safe and not alone. So they've lost out on all of that. So there's lots of other different things, different strategies that you can do for those things instead of having to revert to that way. But I do have trouble convincing parents sometimes of this. Do you, Linda?
So do I. So do I. But it's our goal to change that generational trauma that keeps repeating and repeating. Hey,
Yeah.
listen, when I became a parent in the 90s, I adopted 2 children from Russian orphanages. And when I listened to the professionals and picked up the books, the typical traditional parenting was so behavior modification. It
Mm-hmm.
was sending them to the room. It was having them write lines. It
Mm-hmm.
was taking away privileges. It was all disconnecting. And
Yeah.
so for children who were experiencing trauma or had special needs, it didn't build
Yeah.
that secure base, that connection with us. So yes, that's one of my missions, to encourage parents to be the kind of compass and safe base that their child needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's about being a guide and helping them along, and knowing kind of in the back of your mind they're learning. They're not supposed to know how to regulate yet. They're not supposed to know all the time to do it right.
No.
And I'm there to guide them along, versus shaming and
and
rejecting.
we're there to guide the parents, right? Because
Yeah.
parents really need to learn the right stuff that their kids need.
Yeah, there and it's breaking those patterns. I think parents, when they step up to do that and they do contact me or they do one of my programs, it's so brave. They're the most brave people. I have so much respect for them because they've decided to say, no, something feels wrong about this, or when I was a child I didn't like that and I want to do it differently.
Yes.
That's huge. That's to be commended.
Absolutely. You said a mouthful.
Yeah.
So, Hayley, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you
I
for having me. It's been lovely.